Hi, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Raise the Vibe with Liz. I'm your host, Liz Peterson, and today I'm going to be hosting Jenna Smith. Today, we're going to be diving into root causes and possibly discussing how we get those roots out. So, for those of you who aren't familiar with Jenna Smith, she is a certified practitioner specializing in root cause therapy, energy alignment, and instinctive meditation. She works with unprocessed emotions and releases stuck energies, guiding clients on an unapologetic journey of self awakening through guided healing and shadow work sessions. Jenna empowers others to live intentionally and embrace their unique energy of alignment. Jenna, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Liz, for having me. I'm just really excited to be here and to chat with you too.
I'm excited to have you too. I think that with my work in particular, I'm really interested now in getting to the root of things. So I'm really excited to see how you do it and what you have to bring to this topic. But first, I want to dive into who you are and what brought you to doing this work.
Yes, yes. So again, thank you so much for having me. I am a wife. I'm a mom of two, which really cracked me wide open. So motherhood really was that piece. But we'll start kind of back from the beginning too, because I grew up, I mean, as all of us do, we have our stories, we have our experiences, and I was one at a very young age. I learned the importance of self-love and self-trust and honoring parts of myself, all parts of myself, like the good, the messy, the rebel, the loving, the anxious, like all pieces of me, even though like I didn't understand it. Like looking back in hindsight, I was like, good job, young Jenna, because I really pulled back that veil once I did get into this work of being in this space of struggling a lot growing up with minimal self-worth and just allowing the pressures and expectations of others and just the expectations of the world and growing up in today's society just really molded me into not feeling like I was enough because I was trying to meet external shoulds or meeting, external what I should be doing more of. And I fell into an eating disorder and I struggled with alcohol and just a lot of those inner battles that I was a very emotional kid growing up, really big emotions that I realize now that I was sensitive. I was a lot more in tune than I realized, and I still like think and hear of stories, like when the family sits down at the dinner table and like they tell stories of when you're little and like my story was when we would have like those music recitals, right? And I wouldn't get on stage and I'd be sobbing, not wanting to get on stage. And to me, like to my family, like no harm or ill intent was intended, but I took that as like emotions are bad. Crying is bad. I don't know how to regulate these big feelings I'm having, but this must not be it. And that really just all of these little imprints of our past. I mean, they can be big, they can be small. I don't like to put, that context on it, but all of our past imprints really they can get stuck within our body. And that's, I struggled with anxiety and, like I said, an eating disorder, and really figuring out like those self-sabotaging cycles of myself that I was really blurring the edges of my life. And becoming a mom truly, truly change. It was actually like my Saturn return. I don't know if if we want to go in here, but it was actually I became a mom like that year, or, like within that meat of that Saturn return, and it was just so beautiful. Again, hindsight, I didn't know at the time, but it really cracked me wide open into the healing work and the impact of emotions and our experiences, and I just slowly dabbled into, the energy work and the meditation because I'd be nursing my son as a new mom, just stuck in this anxiety, postpartum depression, nursing my son and like meditating and not knowing even what meditation was at the time. And just like really just letting all of this stuff process. And just if I was sobbing, if I was overwhelmed, if I was happy, if I was sad. And that's what led me into getting certified in meditation. So just all these little things that happened within my life, I really hold that as a mirror for one, myself, and two, just to really be a part of the collective, and waking up and really stepping into your power of being authentically yourself.
Awesome. Thanks for that, Jenna. Thanks for that share. And we're going to dive deeper into that, but I first want you to define what is
Yeah.
root cause therapy.
Yeah. So root cause therapy is an approach to really paint this picture. We all live complex lives. We all live different lives. We all go through hardships, right? So, root cause therapy is a modality of working with subconscious work, working within the subconscious of really getting into the somatic piece. So, a lot of work that I started into is like really just working with the mind, your mindset, and things like that. Root cause therapy is really getting into the soma of feeling said stuck emotions because if we are having an experience or had an experience growing up, two different people can have the same exact experience. But if our nervous systems possibly at one time, one person wasn't at a capacity to process said event, they may have had an imprint or they may have not been able to fully process that experience to where someone else may have had the same exact experience, but was able to process or maybe had a caregiver or something to be able to fully. I always tell my children to like let it go out your toes, like give yourself that space to, feel it out your toes. So root cause therapy is an approach to really, it's a gentle approach where we are able to not relive that experience. We're reliving the feelings within the body. And then we kind of turn up that volume to be able to then process it in those moments and release it.
Nice. So digging down and finding what the root cause is and then moving it through the body and releasing it.
Mhm.
I love that. And I think that that's really what we need to do these days with
Yeah,
everything up and everything that's going on. If we're going to make that shift into a new paradigm, we really need to grasp things by the root and really do the big work in healing. And it's not like we have to spend months and months and months in therapy anymore because once you get to the root and
right.
you realize you're not the story, you don't identify with it anymore, we can move beyond it and find a new normal to live in. Let's talk about you and what you grew up with. I want to backpedal to your story. So, speaking of, so your self,
Yeah.
a lot of people struggle with self-worth. I was listening to someone on YouTube the other day. I work with chakras, and she was mentioning different words that relate to the chakras that were new. And the one for the seventh chakra was self-worth. And I think if we don't have that self-worth, we can't really put
Mhm.
forward, fully ourselves or our creative possibilities in the world. So let's talk about your self-worth and how you help clients with
Yeah.
theirs.
Yeah, that's a great question. So when this is so silly. This has just popped in my head right now, so I feel called to share it, of course. Um, just an example of just the differences of all of us. When I was little, I was the youngest. So just think now I have two children to where my oldest, his struggle is completely different than my youngest. So I kind of resonate a little bit more with my youngest in that capacity because she doesn't get to do everything first and she's always in the shadow, or she might not feel that way, but that's really how I felt. I was always living in the shadow. I had the hand-me-downs. I was always, trying to live up to my older sibling, my sister's expectations or like what she was doing. And again, no ill intent by my parents. Of course, we always do our best. This is not any sort of blaming and shaming and anything like that. But I didn't always have my needs met. And I always thought that I was trying to be someone else because I wanted maybe that attention or I just wanted a new pair of clothes maybe that were my own and I didn't have to share or anything like that. And I really think that and again, going into like uh, generational, we struggle, my family struggled with addiction and things like that. So, of course, there's a lot of different factors that go into the work that I do. I look at things from, of course, an individual standpoint, but then we have the ancestral line, the generational patterns, and just that energetic piece also that we always have the power to rewrite the story. Like you said, like we can change the paradigm, we can change the story, and it really starts with the awareness. And for me, a lot of my shadow work, if you will, I mean, it was when my oldest was like a year old. Things just started like flooding. I had like this spiritual awakening, if you will, but like it was an intense moment where I was like sobbing, like in child's pose, just like rocking. And my husband's like, I just kind of got the kids away. It was when my second was born, actually. She's like, I just kind of got the kids away a little bit because I wasn't sure what was going on. But I feel like that next morning, it was like everything was so clear. And a lot of that times too, I always think like, gosh, why? Like, why? Why, couldn't this have happened before I had kids? Because now it's like I'm learning right alongside them. But it's like, that's the power of that, though. Like, that, this is my story. This is what now I'm being able to be that possibly that first or second generation that's really here to change that story. And here, my children born in, this age of just change and thinking differently. And there's so much, they're both Aquarius, like they're both born in January. So there's just so much within our birth charts that align so beautifully. But going back to the worth piece, it really is that awareness of that first step that I help my clients with is that awareness of let's be honest with ourselves. What are we truly struggling with? What is it? And sometimes we don't know. And that's where root cause therapy, it's not talk therapy, but it is. I mean, because you have to have that safe space and it is creating that safety to be able to allow what is meant to come up to come up. So I work a lot with how to trust your intuition, how to trust, those little nudges, that whisper, and to bring that awareness forth and to trust it, to trust that discernment.
Great. You brought up shadow work and you also brought up an awakening experience. So I want to dive into the shadow work first and then get to your awakening experience because I want to hear all about
Yeah.
so for those in our audience that aren't familiar with shadow work, can you describe a little bit, what that is? I work with it. It's beautiful work. Thank you for doing the work. But really explain like what is shadow work from your perspective? How has it helped you in your life?
Yeah. Yeah, thank you. So, and I love how you said, like, what does shadow work from your perspective? Because I'm someone that always says, like, insert your terminology here. Like, what resonates with you? Some people or different modalities, they're like your orphaned parts or, pieces of you that you've shoved under the rug. Or I really like encompass shadow work as these layers within ourselves that we have suppressed over time. These layers or these pieces or parts of ourselves that we've felt that we possibly didn't, we weren't in a safe container to express at that time. So going back to possibly when you're a child and using my story, when I'm on stage, crying, sobbing, not wanting to go out because maybe I was nervous or, had some sort of fear at that time. And I suppressed that feeling because I didn't feel safe to share because I was just told to stop crying and to get on the stage and do the thing. So that potentially could have created this piece of myself that I didn't feel that was safe to fully express. So we shove it under the rug, if you will. And that could show up later in life in terms of habitual cycles or patterns. I feared public speaking for years. For years, I forced myself in college to take a public speaking class because I'm like, I need to kick this fear. And it's so you kind of see, again, going back to that awareness piece, you see these cycles if we're open to actually paying attention to, like, oh, this is happening over and over in my life. And that shadow work is welcoming and giving yourself that space to honor and allow those parts of ourselves that we have shoved under the rug or suppressed or repressed to be able to come up to, I always say, like, we might not be ready to like welcome them yet, but we're just saying hi. Like, we're just allowing that space for them to be seen. And then we could then move on to maybe being heard and allow those pieces. Because a big part of me was like anger, like that emotion behind the emotion. Like, when I started to really dive into the shadow work, anger was the biggest emotion that came up. And I see that a lot when I work with people with self-worth a lot because they fall into the people pleasing, they fall into the perfectionism, they fall into the over exerting themselves to meet external expectations. So there's a lot of hurt and a lot of anger inside to where once we kind of open that can of worms or start to do that work, anger, and then we kind of want to go back a little bit because you're like, oh, this isn't right, or this shouldn't be, and it's like that's just the beginning, sister. It all in good context, but it's really creating that safety to allow those pieces, those orphaned parts of yourself, to come up to then do the work and if they want to be seen or maybe unprocessed emotions, or it could be done through so much work. So I would love to hear your kind of piggyback off of that too.
Yeah, it's really interesting, Jenna, and you were bringing up like the people pleasing and the ways that we like self like structure our life so we can get our needs
Mhm.
met that weren't met as a child. Or if we have a feeling
Mhm.
of not enough, like what are we going to do in our outer life to make sure that we protect the fact that we don't feel like we're enough? Or if we have an abandonment wound,
Mhm.
and we get the slight sense that we're being abandoned in any way, how our coping mechanisms come on and we start again like um, doing X, Y, or Z to make sure that we're not abandoned. Or if we're feeling abandoned, then if we're aware and are doing the shadow work, we can say in the moment, like, hey, I'm feeling abandoned right now. Or you can say, hey,
Mhm.
I feel like you disappeared for a while, or I disappeared for a while, or I'm feeling, distance would probably be a better way to say that, putting in an I terminology. Like I'm feeling distant. And then when you really look at that,
Mhm.
even with yourself, before you even bring it up to the person, that you might have be having a conversation with or bringing this shadow to, you can look at yourself and be like, okay, I'm feeling distant. Why am I feeling distant? Oh, this text didn't come through right. So now I'm feeling like they've stepped back a little bit, which is triggering my abandonment wound. This is all about me, and my energy right now. What am I going to do to self-soothe myself so I can show up fully? And walking myself through
Yeah.
and then helping my clients do the same, which gets down to like the root of why we're feeling the way that we are, why it was triggered to begin with, and then we're following it back to, oh, it's that wound again, the not enough, the abandonment, the self-worth, whatever it might
Yeah.
be.
Hmm. Exactly.
Yeah, and like you were saying, like meeting those expectations for ourselves, our inner child, to be loved, but really we're the adult. So how can we suss out those, you know, beliefs, patterns, or whatever we have created throughout our lives and step forward to kind of live a life where we're not having those shadows peek up anymore? And I know we can't 100%
Hmm.
get rid of all of them because they are going to raise their little shadowy heads every now and then because it's
Hmm.
life. And through life, we have emotions and we have
Yeah.
dealt with unprocessed emotions and they're going to come in. And I think,
Yeah.
the best time to do it is in the moment and with awareness and, realizing it within yourself before you bring it to other. What do you think?
Yeah, exactly. I feel that the expectations piece, really staying on that worth piece is personally when I was really starting into like doing this my work, my I call it life's work, your healing work, whatever you want to call it. It really was I started communicating. I started speaking. Like I would feel like my throat chakra, like it wasn't itchy anymore. Or, like so now I'm just very much in tune because I work a lot with chakras too in my energy work, but I would just feel like if I would get a knot in my throat, like it's there for a reason, right? To really kind of connect to that. And that was the biggest piece with me was I'm starting to use my voice again. I'm starting to communicate like, hey, that upset me. It's not your fault. It upset me, but let's talk about it.
Mhm.
Really, because I feel like that's when there's a big disconnect in terms of of projecting, let's say, like projecting emotion at someone else versus, hey, I'm upset, I'm owning it, but I'm communicating this with you. Let's create a solution. Let's find a solution about this because my feeling's valid, your feeling's valid. Let's work through this.
Well said, Jenna. I love that. Love it. I want to come back to your awakening because with awakening changes perspective.
Mm.
And with that perspective, you're doing the work. You're having awareness. You're finding
Mhm.
your root cause. You are seeing where you're projecting on someone else. And those awarenesses can often come from awakening experiences, so dive into
Yeah.
your story about your awakening experience because I know my listeners will really love it.
Yes, I love sharing this. The date, I'll start here, was 3/22/23. So it was March 22nd, 2023. And I just love to share that because angel numbers and like those like little signs and synchronicities was like the my starting point, like that stepping stone after this awakening experience. Because I was like, what is going on? So it like came on like instantaneously that night, but I feel like I've had many slap in the face hindsight wise. We'll kind of get into that in a minute, but that night, so my oldest was 3.5. My youngest was like 6 months old. Very, very young. No, she was a year and a half. Excuse me. So 4.5 and 1.5. And so very young kids. They were in the bath, and all of a sudden, I remember I was holding my daughter. My husband was starting the bath, and I'm like, Jameson, I can't. I need to sit down for a minute. It was like this slow onset. And I'm like, I need to sit down for a minute. I can't see straight. And he's like, what is going on? Like, are you okay? So we gave the kids a bath. And I don't remember present life after that. I was like coming in and out a little bit. It was very much, I had a visual experience like this. I was on this visualization. I don't call it astral travel. I'm not really sure what it was, but I was traveling up this tunnel and I saw the light at the end and I was traveling up, like trying to go, and then I would stop and I would get stuck. And then I would kind of come back a little bit to like present life, right? And I would be like, what, like coming in and out a little bit. And then I'd go back to this tunnel. The majority of my knowing is in this tunnel trying to reach this light. I thought I was dying. I legitimately thought I was dying. And because like what do you hear? Like when you're transitioning, you follow the light. And it was just I remember seeing my immediate family, my husband, my two kids, and I remember joking, like calling for my husband, being like, "How the F did you do this before me? Like this is intense." And like just being like really like wanting to get there, but then like I would have these flashbacks of life events and then I would stop and get halted in this tunnel. And ultimately, I did make it to this light, and I just remember seeing all of my family. It was like an ancestral line. Like that was really it. I don't remember much else. Um, Once I reached the tunnel or reached the light, but I did. And then I vomited. Like in present life, I remember puking all like I made it to the bathroom, but I remember puking. And then I nursed my youngest to bed and I went to bed, and I remember waking up that next morning like I have LASIK eye surgery. So like it's like I had LASIK all over again. Like everything was like crisper and clearer. And that next, I was embarrassed at the moment because I was like, I don't know what to talk to my husband about. Like what happened? Because I don't remember like what I was physically doing in this life, right? In the present life. So when I talked to my husband, he's like, you were just sobbing. You were pacing the floor. You were like pacing our steps. You were crying like in the fetal position. He's like, I just kept the kids away from you because you were fine. Like everything was fine. We were in the house, like everything was safe. But he's like, I wasn't sure what was going on. Bless his heart. He's always been the most supportive. And to him now, I'd love to talk to him now and be like, so that was the start of a lot. Because the next day, I just kept getting these downloads, if you will, of you're a healer, you're a healer, you're a healer. And I'm like, what does this mean? And I grew up in an organized religion. I was confirmed, wasn't really practicing, but that opened a lot of spiritual warfare for me. Like, what does this mean? Is this okay? And it really, to me, I mean, it was pretty quick that I came to this just agreement with myself. Like, I have my relationship with God, higher power, source, whatever we want to call it, and that's all I need. Say a prayer, protect me, cover me in safety. I know my intentions. I know that you're here for me and I'm here for the collective, all this stuff. And that really ended. But that spiritual warfare, that the next month, I remember it was then April 16th, 2023, all of my family woke up in the middle of the night. My son, who was potty trained for a couple years at that point, peed the bed. Like we all woke up at like that 2, 3 a.m. mark. It was just my husband and I like jumped up out of bed with like chills down our, arms. And I still like I kept a journal and I still love reading those excerpts, of this journal because it just really started to open up my thinking back. Like I always had it. I always had it. And I would shove it under the rug. I would allow the external, like I needed to fit in the box, or I needed to do this, or this wasn't correct. And I'd always come back to, but this is how I feel, or this is what I feel is correct or right, or right for me, if you will. And so all that work, obviously, that entailed, from 2023 to present time, um, was simultaneously, I'm like, I'm doing this work, but this needs to be known. Like, I'm here to help the collective. Like, I'm here to help everyone wake up, if you will, to their truth, to just loving themselves and trusting, who they are. And it's been a beautiful evolution, but definitely intense.
Beautiful awakening experience. Thank you, Jenna, for sharing that. Let's dive in a little bit deeper to your awakening process because you went through this
Yeah.
process. You woke up the next day, everything was clear. Like, what did life look like on a day-to-day basis after that awakening process? Because it really does shift everything.
Yeah. It does. It does. And going back to something I said earlier too, like when you're feeling like, let's say a negative emotion, like that anger, you think it's bad. You're like, oh my gosh, this must not be the right way to do this, or there must be something wrong. Because for me, started crying again. Like I don't know the last time. Like I've always been like that emotional person, but it would be behind closed doors, or I would, exercise to, just like really to get that energy moving. Or I struggled with an eating disorder, which was very much a control thing for me. So I cried a lot. I cried a lot, and it really opened my eyes to the curiosities. Like I felt like a robot within my life up until that point in a sense. And again, hindsight, right? Like looking back, there were many points within my life to where if I paid attention, that would have been a pivotal point in my life. If I paid attention, that would have been a pivotal, turning point in my life. Um, so it was a lot of just journaling, meditation, the curiosity. Like I would go down rabbit holes. I bought so many books. I just wanted to learn. I was curious. I wanted to learn all different types of religion. I wanted to learn about just like the core values, core beliefs, the parallels of like I just wanted to learn about life. And so that was like me behind the scenes, I guess, like just that rabbit hole of curiosity. And the fear was there probably for like the first month, I would say. And after that night where we all like explosively woke up, that's when I sat down. I'm like, hey, God, Archangel Michael, like all these things. I'm like, okay, if I meant to do this, you gotta protect me a little bit here because this is getting scary. Like, like I'm hovering on that fear standpoint. And ever since then, like it's always been like yeah, there may have been like, oh, my TV turned on randomly. These little things, happen. But it's always just been like everything's okay. Everything is okay. So that fear was very short-lived. It was more so curiosity. And I learned, I was so curious about life. But I mean, living with a husband, living with two little, like raising children, again, like I would love to have my husband right next to me, like hearing his perspective, because I know, I like that term, like it's not you, it's me. Like I know that I changed, but I didn't. Like it was more so like I was just more confident. If I said something, like I meant it. I'm not sugarcoating. Everything's always with the intent of love. And it's kind of hard to explain. I would love to hear your perspective of like your story and just kind of how you can describe yours.
It's interesting because there aren't words sometimes to describe. We just don't have
Yeah.
our vocabulary to explain the experiences that we have sometimes. And it's funny, I was driving up Sunday with a friend to a women's circle where we're going to be doing some group life manifestation work together. And we stumbled on
Mhm.
that same fact. It's like sometimes we just don't have the words because she too has had an experience. I think a lot of people are having experiences or have had experiences to shift them into, the new paradigm that we're walking into right now because we have to have that shift in
Yeah.
perspective to step into something new, right? And it is like doing
Hmm.
something from a space of love. It's automatically knowing because we have a direct connection to source. It's feeling like we're in the
Yeah.
and we could just sit in it day in and day out until an inspiration comes to us and we can follow
Yeah.
it. So, I mean, it's a beautiful experience. And there are sometimes
Hmm.
a lot of things that can just not be explained with basic language because we just don't.
Yeah. And yeah, that's very true because I say that a lot. And that's like a limiting belief that I had growing up. I would struggle with my words a lot because I'm a feeler. I could walk into a room, I know exactly what's going on. And sometimes I can't express that. So then stepping into this experience, I'm like, that's okay. That's okay because I'm here in a different capacity. Like we have so many different bodies, right? Like the mental body, emotional body. So that really was, I see it like as just this beautiful piece of like that's what makes me unique. And I might connect with people on this standpoint, and I might, someone else might be able to, obviously I know, express themselves a lot better vocab like with their communication skills. um but in terms of also something that you said, like with the perspectives shifting, I just remember the biggest thing for me was being myself. Like thoughts of fitting the societal mold, it didn't matter anymore. So, like, I'm not saying like the people pleasing just fell off and everything was fine, but it was really just like that perspective shift of like, what is life? What am I here doing? Like, I would ask myself these deep questions, and then I would go to work, and then I would do the work. And energy healing and like working with energetics and chakras, incredible. That's how I got started and really in tune with like are these sensations that I'm having? Like what are the chakras? And it just all made so much sense. Like sometimes when you learn something, you're like, I've known that. Like I've known that. And now it's just like, oh, it's a refresher. So a lot of this work that I've dove into the past couple years, it's just been like, yeah, this is it. This is it. This is it. And so after really working with energetics and energy healing, angel Reiki, and then getting that instinctive meditation certification to help people kind of create that safety within their nervous system again. I'm like, there's still something else. There's still something else. And I'm like, it was a 3 a.m. Google search. And I'm like, that's it. Like that soma piece, that body piece. Let's bring it all together now. And it's just been so beautiful. And you know, of course, like walking my path, I still love receiving root cause therapy sessions, but then really creating this space for someone else that I I I feel like I work a lot with people that are like on that brink or on that cusp, and I feel like as a collective, like we are in a time of the world of that also, like I think you just mentioned. But I just see myself really attracting those types of people where they're like, I'm confused. I feel like something's not it anymore. And it's really just creating that safety to be like, you might not have the words, going back, circling back to kind of that segue that we just made. You might not have the words, but that inner knowing is enough. And let's start there.
That's awesome. That inner knowing. And you spoke to that too when you were talking about it, that, you knew stuff before, but now after your awakening experience, you really trusted your intuition and you followed it and you were direct with it because you just knew. You knew that that was correct. And I
Hmm.
think that that's something that also happens.
Yeah.
A lot of people, like our ability to trust our intuition and our real internal, authentic self-knowing had been stripped away from us in the past paradigm, because, it's
Hmm.
like, words from our parents, that point to not trusting. Are you sure? The basic term, are you sure? That people say.
Yeah.
Or you're in school and you're not allowed to express yourself. So you don't feel like
Hmm.
going back to worth that what you have to say is worth saying, or worth contributing
Hmm.
to, which also contributes to it. So being taught over and over again that, what we have to say doesn't have meaning or purpose. And then coming back to that later in life as we grow up and realize, we've lost our voice in the past, or we didn't think that, what we felt mattered, or we were told that, our dreams were just dreams and they weren't real, or, what else could it be? Um, kind of lost my train of thought there for a second. That coming to, oh, back to the intuition again and our instincts that they're incorrect and that learning to trust ourselves again. And I think that's really important thing. And
Mm-hmm.
one of the things that, just hearing you speak about the root cause therapy and how you work with your clients and yourself, that it's bringing it back to self, bringing it back to authenticity and bringing it back to, that trust within yourself to be able to live the life without all the limiting beliefs and the shadows rearing their head because you have awareness.
Yeah. Exactly. That's so beautiful. And just to speak a little bit with with emotions,
Please.
because root cause therapy is very much it's bridging the subconscious with the conscious because we consciously, of course, are having this conversation right now. I consciously can say, I don't want to have chocolate cake tonight, in the pantry or in the fridge or whatever. And then tonight comes and let it be it's a habit, let it be it's meeting an emotional need because it makes me feel good. I go for the darn chocolate cake again. Like, what my conscious willpower said no. There's so much more depth into that subconscious piece that it's meeting a need. So let's bridge this gap. What is that emotional need? Because emotions, they're they're like the language of the soul. Like I can't take that quote. I don't know where I have it from, but they really are pieces of ourselves that I feel have just gotten so blindsided and just so I I just lost my train of thought now. Not shoved under the rug, but just not given the acknowledgement when they're a part of our communication method for ourselves and they're our guidance system when we have that safety to actually feel them and then go into, I consciously don't want to eat this cake. I'm saying this right now. What is it? What is it? And then, oh, it's making me feel good. It makes me feel good. Or it's the some sort of, you mentioned earlier, just like those coping mechanisms,
Mhm.
like that it could be eating for you, it could be drugs for you, it could be alcohol, it could be sex, it could be gambling, it could be so many different things, shopping. So that identifying that coping mechanism helps you come back to find those roots also.
Yeah, as soon as I grab those chips at 9 o'clock at night, I know I'm not dealing with some sort of emotion, especially when I can't stop it. Because when there's nothing going on,
Right,
you can
right, exactly.
go through the evening without snacking. But if something's going on, it's just like, okay, where's the chips? Where's the salsa? Where's the snack?
Yeah. Hmm.
100%. Yeah. And
Exactly.
yeah, you speak about that emotional and energetic baseline, the hidden vibrations that are driving our life. And I think that, those underlying emotions or things that we're not dealing with in the present, we're sweeping under the rug, like you say, really drive us towards those
Mhm.
coping mechanisms where we don't want to feel, we want to be numb. It could be conscious. I've heard you say in the past in other interviews, that it could be a conscious thing, where you're like, oh, I have this thing, I just want to numb out. But it can be a lot of the times unconscious. I know with me, it's unconscious. And the cue for me that I'm not
Hmm.
having to address something is the snack.
Yeah.
Yeah, so how do you work with
So that
like
just freeze.
helping people embody, their emotions, know what the emotions are pointing to, see the coping mechanism, recognize, when they're grabbing for the chips and salsa, that there's something that they're not dealing with. How do you walk them through in root cause therapy to really discover how to, step into a space of not having those cravings or not grabbing the drink or whatever it might be?
Hmm. Yeah, that's a really great question. And have you heard of Dr. David Hawkins' scale of consciousness?
I haven't.
Okay. Okay. So that is really what, not that I bring it into every single session, but that really is kind of like the modality that we follow is Dr. David Hawkins, he wrote Power versus Force, The Scale of Consciousness Explained, I believe. He's incredible. A great mentor that I follow, just like Gabor Mate, very much on that same wavelength with me. And he created this scale of consciousness to where each emotion has an energetic frequency, just like everything everything, is made up of energy. So each emotion also holding some sort of energetic frequency. And those heavier emotions are the shame, the guilt, the grief, the apathy, the anger, the resentment. And then as you get higher up this scale, they're lighter. They're the love, the peace, the joy, the fulfillment, the enlightenment, let's say. So I really work with this scale because when we're stuck in these cycles of grief, we might be pulling for that drink, or if we're stuck in these shame cycles or guilt cycles, those heaviest of the heavy emotions, those that guilt and that shame, we're pulling for that, that drug or that hit or that drink because it's helping us feel acutely, very acutely short term, feeling those feelings of possibly joy or happiness in the moment, or taking that first shot. It's like, oh my gosh, I feel like myself, or whatever that might be. That was my thing. Like it was really that alcohol piece for me to where I felt like I could finally just be me. It blurred the edges just enough to quiet the voices, to just be me. And so for me, that's really what that was. But it was acute because then you needed another one. You'd come back down and then you'd need another one. So that's really how that addiction can form is you're chasing those feel good feelings, but you're not addressing the rut of why am I naturally, innately feeling this grief or this shame or this anger or this guilt. So that's really where we start. I talk about the scale of consciousness with my clients, but not always directly like that because it's like, okay, let's start here. Let's address kind of where we're feeling. And then that's kind of what we do within our sessions. It is subconscious work. So it's not like, okay, we're working with guilt today. We're trusting that the subconscious mind is taking us exactly where we need to go because consciously we might be holding on to something that isn't necessarily quote unquote the rut. So I get the in our session, it's like a meditative, bring down the brave brain waves a little bit. It's not necessarily hypnosis, but we allow the subconscious mind to take us on this journey to really back into that event, to feel said emotion of that event. And that's when we work on that somatic piece of allowing it to come and to process to
Oh,
then naturally, innately, slowly start to feel those feelings of the peace, the joy, the love, the bliss naturally without the substances.
wonderful. And I love how you're blending the meditative process, the subconscious process with the somatic
Mhm.
process, because our body holds on to things too. So our body is holding on to
Yeah.
something. Our subconscious is functioning off past limiting belief programs or whatever we have set up from childhood and beyond. And
Mhm.
then we're just functioning like automatically from these spaces. So being able to bring in that work where you're working with both of them, I'm imagining is
Mhm.
very profound work.
Mhm.
Yeah. How do
It's
you
life
see
changing.
that being changed, within yourself and your clients, and maybe a story or two, an example of what that looks like, things that you've worked on, and how it's bettered people's lives?
Yes, that's a great, great question. And I'll just continue with me. I mean, because again, like we all need to start, with ourselves. And I feel like powerful, powerful work is done like when you do hit that rock bottom piece. And so just using or talking about root cause therapy sessions with me with the like my core root belief, like that limiting belief was like, I'm not enough. But there were so many spider webs as to like possibly I'm not enough, I'm not heard, I don't trust myself. Like there could be so many little sub things that come into that. And with alcohol, let's say, after these sessions, there might not be this profound like, oh, the next day I'm completely different. There is that integration process, there is that detoxing process to be able to then rewire those cells, to be able to allow that neuroplasticity to rewrite that narrative. That's why we do still go back to that event to be able to, if that inner child needs compassion or needs an embrace or needs a hug or needs to be told something that they needed in that moment versus what actually happened in that moment, you can rewire that belief or that experience. So with alcohol with me, it was never like a huge, like overnight, like I'm done drinking. I'm just done drinking. It was this awareness, these subtle pieces of, oh, I would drink to numb the edges. I would drink when I would have this pit in my chest, or after a work day, I was stressed. I needed it to unwind, or I was anxious and overstimulated with my kids. Let me have a glass of wine while I'm making dinner. Like all these, it was like again, the awareness piece of why, number one. And number two, like once I kind of got through or like healed, like I'm not pulling for a drink now when I'm anxious. Let's actually like sit with this anxiety or sit with this overstimulation or sit with this anger or have that conversation. So it was like those subtle little shifts. But then I also noticed like I also, when I am in a really good mood, I want to celebrate. So then it was a whole other layer then of that celebration piece with alcohol. So it's all like in the awareness and then allowing yourself to fully embody the integration of, yes, this is the experience or this is my present life, but this is how I'm feeling in my body and this is why I'm choosing to pull for that drink or to grab that bottle. And I keep saying subtle because it's almost like just those little light bulbs or those little like clicks or those little like downloads that come in and you're like, oh, oh, and then it's different. Like it's just different after that. So I don't know if that kind of answers your question, but it's the just the subtle pieces of and then if you dive into journaling or use your meditation practices or just that ongoing piece of integration, because we've kind of touched on this already, is like we're never gonna be perfect. We're never going to heal our way out of being human. We're always going to have the ups and the downs and the ebbs and the flows. And overstimulation is still my number one. Like, mama needs a fiver. Okay. We got a lot going on. We just got to finish one thing before we start another. So I still, like, obviously get heightened, and my nervous system is like, oh my gosh, like, we need to slow down. So, we can never come to perfection, but it's the awareness to be able to then in the moment, let's take that fiber to then come back down. Let's do that breathing exercise. Let's sit with my children so then they see the example of when you're upset or whatever. My son, changing the subject a little bit, my son had, we forgot his cold lunch yesterday. School just started. My fault. I fully take ownership. But I forgot to pack his school lunch in his backpack, and his teacher messaged me right after school started. Jace is really upset. He forgot his cold lunch, and I'm thinking in my head, all right, I wonder if he like threw a fit or went up calmly to his teacher and like said, because he's 6. So of course there's big emotions there. But after school, I asked him, and he goes, a little bit of both. And I said, that's good. You had the awareness. So,
That's adorable. And there it is again, just like having the awareness. And that's the integration part is like when something happens, like
yeah.
we're still human. It's like even after awakening, you still have to wash the dishes and take care of your kids, family, house, cleaning, whatever, right? Yourself. There's that piece of humanity is still happening. The personal is still happening. People are still going to be peopling around you, and
Yeah.
impacting your life, and how
Yeah.
up to those impacts. And I think that integration that you talked about, the journaling about it or taking the five or whatever it might be, to make different choices in the moment, that's, the gift of doing the work, the gift of doing the shadow work,
Yeah.
the gift of having the awareness, the gift of the awakening is that you just sit back and kind of relax and observe and do your tools, and you have your toolkit next to you, and you just like pick out whichever one works in the moment and present it to the world or present it to the person in front of you or your kids or family or whatever it might be. That's yeah,
Mhm.
that integration. I love that. Thank you for bringing that up. How do you like bring integration? What does integration look like to you? How has that process worked in your life? How do you feel like you have integrated and you work in the world?
Oh, that's such a loaded question, and I could go so many different ways. It really is having the tools and the resources in the moment to kind of piggyback and just expand on that
Please.
because after, let's say, I had this like light bulb moment, or after possibly I had a root cause therapy session with myself or whatever, it's allowing yourself the space to to process. So I have an integration meditation that I obviously send my clients and then I do myself to really just, it's a visualization meditation, but it's also just giving yourself that 10 minutes to just be. Because you said it, like life goes on. We have the dishes, we have the chores, we have the schedules, we have the appointments. That's not going to change. So it's how to live in this human life with the tools to stay present, to put down the phone or to put down that stimulating piece of technology or whatever it might be, to not necessarily like sit and play with the kids, but just to be, to observe, to listen, to get in tune with yourself. And yes, of course, have that time to sit and play with your kids, but to really, it, the perspectives have just changed so much with me in terms of like if we go away for the weekend, I would be so anxious, so stressed. Yeah, there's still everything still needs to get done, but it's just different in terms of like I know everything's going to get done. I'm calmer. I am getting to the point where I could ask for help. Again, coming back to that people pleaser, I can do it all, meeting those expectations. I've struggled with asking for help because I can do it because I have to prove myself type mentality to where now I'm like, hey, I have a lot to do. Like today, even for example, my son had a half day today. Totally spaced it. It's the second week of school. I didn't realize half days were already here. I haven't gone through the academic calendar yet. We are very fortunate that my husband is also self-employed. So I'm like, hey, you need to can you come home, to do this and just to watch the kids to get Jace off the bus and I'll go to the office and record my podcast. I would have never done that. I would have been like straining myself, figuring out, do I reschedule? Do I get a babysitter? It's he's my husband. Of course he's here to help. He's their dad. So it's just like those little shifts to where like just the perspective piece. And he was, of course, happy to do it. And I don't know what they're doing. Like, I'm like, I want to be with them, but it's, yeah, it's really those pieces of finding the tools, the resources, let it be in the moment. For me, it's meditation. For me, I go through stints of like automatic journaling and pieces like that, but a lot of times it's just the quiet for me, the meditation, the sometimes, yes, I'm trying to like quiet the mind, but that's not what meditation is. Meditation is allowing yourself the space to either process everything that's been going on that you've been shoving back because you've been going. Meditation is allowing that space to process, allowing that space to connect back to yourself, to connect back, possibly to your heart. And I intentionally follow different meditations, but sometimes I'm just like, I'm just gonna sit and be and just try to call him for a minute too.
Nice. And I really feel like what you're describing is that energetic alignment to life, to where
Yeah.
you've
Yeah.
gone, you've learned the tools, you've integrated your, expressing in the world in this new normal that you have, post all the work that you've done. Not that the work is done, but you've done some work to get you to this point,
Right.
and now you're in alignment
Right.
and living in a,
Hmm.
yeah, in an aligned flow. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And that's why, I mean, I call it like finding your energy of alignment because so often, like when you get in like these states of flow or you feel like you're just on a high and you're completely sober, you're like, I'm just in a really good mood. Like, of course, there's a lot of different factors. There's our menstrual cycle, there's like so many different things going on. But there's also that piece of finding your energetic flow. Like, when you are just naturally feeling at peace, even if there's tornadoes going on around you, cyclones going on around you, you have that inner peace, that inner sovereignty. And we fall out of alignment, of course. Like that comes back to those ebbs and flows. So it's really, I help my clients and, of course, myself to find those tools that work for them to learn how to step back in to alignment.
Nice. That's wonderful. Jenna, this has been awesome. What a great conversation. How can people find you? Where can, they reach you if they want to work with you or learn more about root cause therapy or anything else that you offer, your meditations or what have you?
Yes, thank you so, so much. I also have a podcast, Naturally Empowered Living. My website is naturallympoweredliving.com. I have a bunch of free resources, free meditations. Instagram, I'm present, but not so much naturally empowered living. And yeah, I'm just so, so thankful for this work. I would say my website, naturallympoweredliving.com. I mean, it expands and, segues off of everything that I offer from there also.
Awesome. That's wonderful. I'll have to check out your podcast, Naturally Empowered Living. And then naturallympoweredliving.com is the website, everybody. So go check it out. And Jenna, one more question for you. Um, and I also want to tell my audience before I ask this question, like we're going to be doing a little after chat, and you're going to be able to find that on Patreon. So pop over to Patreon and check out our after chat. But Jenna, what is a jewel of wisdom that you would love to leave our audience with today?
What a good question. I love it. So, something that I'm going to share my piece of wisdom, like if I could raise my children with anything, if they take anything from me, I would hope that it would be to love themselves. And I'm going to expand a little bit, but like to truly love themselves. And I picture it like this umbrella, like to love who they are, to be confident in all of they are, to believe in themselves and to trust themselves even in those hard times because it is so, so easy to just try to fit in. Or, I'm just thinking of my children, but to try to fit in, to try to make friends. But same in adulthood, we're trying to find our way. And so often in that upbringing, we lose ourselves. And then we're in our 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, and we're like, who the hell am I? What is going on? What is life? This is not like it's silly like to think like when I was growing up, they called it like a midlife crisis, right? But it's like, it's the same thing as what we're experiencing now. Now it's like you're coming back home to yourself, right? It's not a crisis at all. Like it's a beautiful evolution. So it really is to really come back home to yourself in your love, trust, belief, and connection.
I love that, Jenna. What a great jewel of wisdom. Thank you for sharing that. And thank you so much for joining me. It's been such a pleasure to host you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. It was so nice to be here.
And I'm so excited to dive into our after chat after this. I want to dive into your awakening, how it sounds like an NDE and that spiritual warfare, and maybe a little bit around that astrological shift that you experienced that you spoke about way in the beginning of the podcast. So I'm excited about that. So thank you, Jenna. Everybody, thank you
Yeah.
for joining me again. I'm Liz Peterson. This is Raise the Vibe with Liz. I'll see you in the after chat. And remember to get out there and raise the vibe, everybody. Bye now.